A little over 10 years ago, the Montana Chamber embarked on an in-depth analysis of the top hurdles that businesses in Montana were having for struggling with economic growth. These hurdles became the pillars of Envision 2026, the 10-year strategic plan for the Montana Chamber. Workforce was one of the 4 pillars, and as we look towards the next 10 years, addressing workforce readiness continues to be a priority. And for an update on that and the ongoing concerns, we've got a few people that are going to help us with workforce development. Please welcome to the stage Ed Buttrey, President and CEO of the Montana Hospital Association, Tracy German, Community Engagement and Government Relations for Northrop Grumman, Elizabeth Feary, Director of MSU Career Services, and Adam Gilbertson, Senior Vice President, Field Technology of RDO Equipment and State Workforce Innovation Board Member.
We were wondering what our walk-up song would be, so well done, well done. We got some directions from James that we need to sit and look good for a little bit to get a picture, so we're gonna make sure that happens. And now we're good. Hello, I'm Adam Gilbertson, current member of the Montana Chamber of Commerce Board, and really enjoy the service on that. And then for the last 4 years, I've been a member of the Governor's Workforce Innovation Board and the current chair. And so this is quite a passion for me, the workforce, and something I've been doing at RDO Equipment for about 22 years as we try to find talent across our footprint to come into our industry. So really excited to lead this panel today, and we'll let the panelists introduce themselves.
Thanks, Adam. I'm Ed Buttrey. I have a couple different roles. I've been in the legislature for about 16 years, currently in the House. And as of mid-part of this last year, I'm now the President and CEO of the Montana Hospital Association.
Good morning. I'm Tracy German. I am from Great Falls, Montana. I'm working with Northrop Grumman to bring the Sentinel Project to the entire West, right? So there's actually 5 states that are involved, but Montana is key with Malmstrom Air Force Base. I've been a previous city commissioner up in Great Falls, and I've always talked about ecosystem. How do we bring the entire ecosystem up? And workforce has become a very pivotal and very large segment of that piece of that puzzle.
Good morning. I'm Elizabeth Feary. I'm the Director of Career Services at Montana State University, and thrilled to be here today talking about this particular subject. From orientation to graduation and beyond, MSU Career Services is working with students to create career connections with employers, as well as help them to develop their career-ready skills so they can launch successfully into Montana's workforce.
Thank you, and welcome to all of you. We're starting this in kind of the shadow of a new strategy in the state. The governor announced in August the 406 Jobs Initiative, and what he asked us all, from education, from the state government, and from industry, is can we come together and focus on how we bring careers and opportunities to Montana employees and students. 406 jobs, obviously our area code, but it stands for 4 pathways to work, one being college, career, military, and entrepreneurship, 0 barriers to employment to get there, and focusing on 6 high demand sectors that are really critical to the state. It's a framework. There are a lot of partners in this process, and many of us in the room are a part of that. But trying to figure out a better way to bring the kind of scale and support to help Montana kids find great Montana careers. And the Workforce Innovation Board has a really important part to play in that. And the great part about the Chamber is there's been a long time history of that partnership. Paul Hophoff had kind of co-led both of them for a period of time. I sit in that role today, and then Jason Yeager is also kind of dual-hatted in this process. So very great connection with the Chamber. But we're gonna start first around the career environment. And as we think about that and how things have changed over the years, really want to look at it from how does that perspective look from both the employee and the prospective student? And we're going to start with Elizabeth.
Yeah, thanks for the question, and hopefully I can frame this from my pivotal perch from which I operate, I get to work with both employers, industry, and students, and so it's sort of a niche in terms of the insight that I get, but it's certainly not the end-all, be-all. And what I will say is that majority of students at Montana State would prefer to stay in state after graduation and work. They're not finding the opportunities. They're struggling to find those opportunities. And I think it's incumbent upon me, as well as all of you, to work together to figure out how can we create these connections to address some of the workforce development issues in the state. And let me stop there because I know other panelists have great ideas too.
Ed, if you would.
Well, I think it... Hello? I think, we've seen a real change in the job market and how our workers now perceive their career ladders. I think the days are gone when somebody would go into a job out of high school or college or whatever training they had, and they would stick with that job or probably that employer through their entire work career. What we have now are people that are more into job hopping, and a lot of that's because there are a lot of jobs available. And so we need to embrace this. We need to find ways that we can provide the education skills for what our industries need, and then know that the training and the career path doesn't end there. We need to retain that workforce. In a lot of cases, that means providing that skills and training and other ways towards better jobs to people that might not be in their 20s. They might be in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s. And we need to look at that as a way to retain that workforce and especially keep them in state. Healthcare is an incredibly big portion of our workforce. I think there's 74,600 workers in healthcare in Montana right now. It might kind of astound you, it did a little bit with me, that that's more than the number of hospitality and recreation workers. So there's a lot of this workforce pipeline that we have to be able to fill and we have to be able to retain. And we need to, they perform a very mission-driven job. They're here to keep our population healthy, and we know that when they do their job and the population is healthy, then you have more workers to go into jobs across the state.
Tracy?
So I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach, but I'm going to give a little caveat. So the Sentinel program, which is coming to Montana, is a Northrop Grumman prime-led project for the Air Force. So when people hear Northrop Grumman, they typically think engineers, rocket scientists. And we still need them, and we're still recruiting them, and we have lots of opportunity for them. But this particular project is going to be really focused on the trades, right? Because we're going to go out and we're going to be building infrastructure, silos, we're going to do roads, and not all of the work is going to be hired individuals to Northrop Grumman. The odds that a welder is going to get hired by Northrop is probably pretty slim. But they're going to be hiring the local business who has the welders. They're going to be hiring the local businesses to do the HVACs. There's going to be funding that comes in from all different sources. Maybe it'll be Air Force-led, traditional, non-traditional MILCON, things like that. And so we have to look at the entire ecosystem. And I keep going back to what are our folks, I'm not going to use the word youth as much as possible, because I'm not sure it's always the high school student. It might be that person that's 26, 35, 48, that says, you know what am I really good at? I know how to change tires. Well, there's going to be a lot of pickup trucks in the state of Montana on this project. So that's an opportunity of an industry that will grow. Who's going to change oil? Who's going to do the porta pots? That's always the big joke in our office, is that we're always talking about who's going to provide all the porta pots across the state of Montana. So that's entrepreneurship. That's part of the 406 plan for the SWIB, right? So we need to be looking at if one industry anywhere in the state of Montana grows, if we get a bunch of nurses that need to come work on a project, who's going to feed the nurses? Well, we need hospitality. So as we start to elevate certain industries or certain trades, then we have to make sure that we're pulling each of our other sectors up alongside of us, because that's how we'll be successful. The number one reason people leave is because they're unhappy, typically not necessarily with their job, right? We were just talking about that backstage. They don't like the community they're in. They can't get a good burger. There's no Italian food, right? It's like these weird things that rub us that actually push us out the door. So how can we build our entire system to support all the work. Because we've got young people that want and know how to do the work we need in Montana. We just have to create an environment that allows them to stay with us.
I'm going to, go ahead, Elizabeth.
I could add one more point. I think it's important to remember in this equation the role of higher education. And I realize that higher ed is not the right path for everyone, and that's okay. But we are your partner, and we're here as a viable institution. We're focused on, especially at Montana State, on helping students to develop these critical skills that are needed, life skills as well as durable skills, metacognition, how do you problem solve, how do you work on a team, so that when they come to you and you hire them, that they're actually ready to engage in the workplace. So think of us as a partner, and not just Montana State, of course I have to speak for my school, but all the higher ed institutions in Montana. We're here to help drive forward this 406 initiative, which is so fantastic, right? Statewide energy around workforce development, and you have a partner with us at Montana State.
Is there another higher ed school in Montana?
Cat fans
Montana
this week.
State. Montana State.
I'm Switzerland in this process, so we've got some fantastic institutions, and I think one of the things that we take for granted in that is we've got really well-defined pathways for doctors and lawyers and accountants. If you want to do that and you're passionate about those roles, we know how to get students there. There are about 4,000 students in the state of Montana every year that graduate and don't go to college or to the military. And so the question in my industry often ends up being, how do we help connect them? How does a young student from a school in rural Montana find their way to a construction company, to an equipment dealership, to a retail operation, and a resume that may not really speak well to who they are because they're new and entering the workforce? How do we find those spaces for them to make their mark and to get that chance? And I think as we think about this world as we go forward, we've got to think how we bring them into the process, understanding that sometimes they may jump into the industry and then they may go on to college, or they may go on to government service or the military, but really working through a broad pathway, and I think that's what 406 does for us. When Tony opened this today, he said 10 years ago we said workforce was our biggest issue. Guess what? Workforce is still our biggest issue. But things have changed, and the expectations of industry and the expectations of the jobs have changed, and I was wondering if you all might reflect a little on what that looks like today versus 10 years ago.
Well, I think, Adam, you were exactly correct. There is a well-defined pathway to education for some folks in healthcare, like physicians, doctors, nurses, things like that. But that certainly isn't the bulk of the healthcare workforce. I think what we need to do in healthcare is we need to look at statewide and find out what that pipeline of healthcare workers are that are needed. So we're not just looking at our own institutions, our own health systems, but we're looking at the pipeline statewide. And then we engage these children, these students early. We think middle school, high school, maybe even grade school, so that they're engaged, they get to learn a little bit about the occupations, and they learn about some great jobs that are available in their communities. And then, like you said, Adam, not everyone's built for college or university or even trade schools. We have the ability now, through engaging these students and working with the education system, to get these kids to work while they're still in high school, where they can go in, they can job shadow, they can start undertaking some of the work, they can start getting some of the experience. In some cases, they can start getting credentials. So when they reach the end of their education path, whatever they may choose, they can go right into the workforce. And then they can go into things like apprenticeships or credential stacking, and they can improve their job, their pay, their benefits, all the things they can do while they're still working, because they may not want to go to school to do that. And I think the work that the Department of Labor has done, Commissioner Swanson, who is unbelievable, and the Gianforte administration with the 406 jobs, and now there's great opportunities in the Rural Health Transformation Program, we have this new vision of getting people into the job market while they're training, getting them the experience, allowing them to upscale those jobs while they're still working and providing services for that employer, I mean, it's exciting. And I think the state is doing the exact right thing right now. And in healthcare, if we look at that pipeline and what we need to fill now and into the future, we can utilize these tools to make it successful.
You know, maybe give you a little credit from your time in the legislature. And the panel this morning probably should hear this too. The enabling legislation that you've created over the last few sessions and funded to allow students to get into industry has been incredibly impactful. And it maybe speak a little to that.
I think it was House Bill 336, which added all the apprenticeships. I think there's about 30 of them right now. Rural health program is going to allow us to increase those apprenticeships. In healthcare, we need to really get on the ball with that. We aren't utilizing apprenticeships now to the degree that we should. We've identified that. Now we know we've got to use it more moving forward. And then we've got the STARS Act. And the STARS Act is really going to help connect employers with education systems to make sure that these kids have access to what these industries are and they're prepared. And I'll tell you, when we identify this pipeline of workers we need, then we need to figure out what is the education, the skills, the certifications that they need. We need to get with our education partners, whether it's middle school, high school, the MUS, and we need to work with them so they're teaching the skills that these students need to use in the job. So the kids aren't going to school and learning a bunch of stuff that's not going to be utilized in the workforce. They're coming out of that educational level, whatever they choose, and they're ready to go to work.
Very good.
I'll add to that. I'm going to tell a story that I wasn't planning on telling. So my son graduated in 21. He had a wonderful high school career, as you can only imagine what a kid would tell you that graduated in the middle of COVID. And so we come from a military family, and we come from desk jobs. My son was coming up through the ranks at Great Falls High, and we just assumed he was going to go on to college to be a teacher. That's where he was going. And during the middle of COVID, he found out about a welding program at the high school. And so he went into the welding program because they were allowing the kids to weld during COVID. So that sounded really exciting to him. And the Great Falls College said, hey, we can actually dual credit you in this program. And the GM Forte Family Foundation said, we'll actually pay for those credits, right? Because there's a small fee, like $750 that you could apply for a scholarship. So my son found himself in the welding program. And I have to tell you, he came home one day and he says, Mom, it's the craziest thing. They actually want people to live in trailers in the middle of nowhere, Montana, and weld pipelines. And I said, I know, buddy, but sometimes that's what you have to do when you're a young person in the workforce. And he's like, no, that's my dream job. I didn't know. He's like, they said I could then hunt. And I was like, yeah. So again, flipping that thinking. So he graduated 2 weeks from the College of Great Falls with his associate's degree before he graduated high school. He then, and that's a great story, but the real story is about a local contractor in Great Falls who then hired him. And he said, you're young, you probably don't really know what you want to do. So we're gonna build a couple of houses. They demoed a house and rebuild a house, and they've done that 5 or 6 times since they've been working together. He also does special welding projects at Big Sky. So that's where he was last week. So that was an employer who was willing to take on a couple of young kids from a welding program that understood, and that employer does the weird things. He will bid on some jobs at Big Sky and then give the kids some ski tickets for the weekend. Okay, right? So now you have a reason to go and stay. They've done some work at Holter Lake, and they got to camp at Holter Lake and fish every night. So to me, that's workforce development. That's an employer saying, I can't maybe pay you always a higher rate, or I don't want you to go work for the competition. I want to keep you happy where I'm at. So I throw those ideas out there. I think there needs to be more taking on the young person and mentoring them and asking what they want and need.
Elizabeth, I'm going to ask you to maybe spend a little time reflecting on MSU and your specific role in this. We'll have to do equal time for the U of M, but I think it's really helpful to hear what that role is. And as a business community, this is available at all the institutions. How do we engage?
Well, I think this ties in really well to a couple of things that my panel associates have already mentioned. One is the ability to pivot. And it's something that we're leaning into at Career Services at Montana State is how can we help students. You know, they're gaining all these skills. They're gaining technical skills. They're exploring different opportunities through extracurricular activities, through enhanced classroom experiences, and experiential learning. And so, how do you help them to capitalize on that? And many students, maybe not unlike your son, already think, okay, I know this is exactly what I want to do. And then there are quite a few students who have no idea what they want to do, and they don't know what they don't know. So it's our job to help educate them and help them to understand that. And I don't want to do that alone. I want to do that with all of you, with industry partners. And this ties to something that Ed brought up, which is working at an industry level and across industry is so much more effective. I'm not saying that every employer has the exact same needs and challenges, but there are some similarities. And I think if we can approach it this way, and we at Career Services at Montana State partner with industry and bring you into the college. I mean, many of you are already involved with us in various colleges at Montana State, but how do we further develop that? How do we lean into that? How can we innovate? How can we incorporate technology to advance networks that will help us to facilitate mentoring, networking, and career exploration, right? Again, students don't know what they don't know. And we all in this room and out there watching know a lot more, but we also don't individually have all the answers. So working together across industry with us and with your and I will do this and don't tell my president, right, President Tessman, but you know, with any of your higher education institutional partners in their career services, I think we all have a very similar mission in what we want to accomplish, and at MSU we're ready. We're ready for you, so come knock on our door, please.
You know, I think one of the things that is challenging as an individual business is you often don't have the size or scale to support a sustainable program. And industry partnerships, you know, the Chamber is a great statewide umbrella for business, but the Hospital Association, we've got our friends from the Contractors Association in the back in construction. There are a number of other statewide trade associations where you can start to get the scale where partners can, even competitors, can come together under the banner of workforce development and growing the pie of interest. And as you read through the 406 plan, one of the expectations in industry is if you're wanting to participate, you come with two things, resources and time. Because those are the things that really matter in this process. And I'm going to share a quick story of success of bringing young people in and then them going somewhere else. And it was our first two students in the Build Montana program in Billings, Montana in 2020 in COVID. We had two young men high school seniors from the Indian Reservation in the Billings School District, had been working at Walmart and came into the Build Montana program, interested in just seeing what it was like. Through that experience, they had an opportunity to work with one of the senior leaders at Knife River, our equipment store manager in Billings, and a number of other people involved in the construction industry. In that time period of 6 weeks where they're doing the classroom work and they're in high school coming on site, they got a chance to show up every day, show that they could learn about safety in the construction industry, and by the time they graduated from the program at 18 years old, Knife River made a decision to offer them both full-time roles driving haul trucks. You talk about hunting? Driving a haul truck for an 18-year-old boy is a really big deal. They spent the next year doing that full-time. They then decided, through this opportunity to gain experience, gain confidence, gain some career work, to go on to the University of Montana. in Missoula. Great story. Not what we expected on the construction side. We were kind of hoping they'd stay in our space, but we just created an opportunity to lift young people in the state, and that's what you can do when you work in these programs. Ed, the medical profession continues to struggle with workforce. Projections from the governor's office say 8,500 a year for the next 10 years. How do we address that shortage?
Yeah, that's on top of all of our minds, especially in our rural areas. And I think, as I said before, the first thing that we have to do is we have to identify that future pipeline of workers that we need. And we're not just talking medical providers, we're talking folks in a wide variety of career choices. And we need to look at that pipeline, and then we need to get, again, with our educational institutions and make sure that we're providing exposure to students as to jobs that are needed to fill that pipeline. Working with our education partners to ensure that training is available, that maybe advanced college credits are available, that job shadowing. I tell you, the job shadowing is such a cool thing. I have a daughter that's a senior in high school right now, and she's been a bit confused as to what she wants to do in life. And I just love healthcare. I'm a weird person. I love healthcare, and so I've always kind of pushed her towards a career in healthcare. She knows she wants to go to MSU. That's where her dad went, and so she wants to go there. So we looked at the careers that MSU has to offer in healthcare, and one of the things that pops up, obviously, is nursing. So we were able, through her high school, CMR, the good high school in Great Falls, able to get her in a job sorry.
I'm wearing my blue.
We were able to get her in a job shadowing course in the NICU nursing unit at Benefice in Great Falls, so she could get experience with what that job entailed and the types of people that she'd be working with, the type of patients that she'd be affecting, and she instantly fell in love with the nursing career. And so now she knows she's doing things in high school to get her prepared for that nursing career, and she's now got her career path mapped out in college because she wants to go to university. And I think that's amazing. So that's one of the things that we really have to do, work with our education partners, get kids early access to the jobs that are available and get them excited about the industry. Certainly through the RHTP and 406 jobs, we know that we have to expand our residency and clinical rotation opportunities. That has got to be a big focus, especially in our rural areas, is get students, whether they're nurses, physicians, healthcare providers, get them into the rural areas, get them experiencing, practicing in those rural areas. It's awesome for those rural hospitals because they all of a sudden now have more medical providers. But we also know that when medical students do residencies in an area, 70% of them choose to stay in that area. Well, we haven't had those residency and rotation spots available in a lot of our rural areas, so we've got to do that. We also have to look at the current workforce. How do we retain those workforces? How do we give people opportunities for career growth while they're in the workforce? So that's where the apprenticeship again comes in, stackable credentialing, other innovative ways to keep people working in those facilities and maybe even working longer because they're excited about what they're doing. At the end of the day, hospitals provide really good paying jobs. Hospitals provide great benefits. Hospitals have a very mission-driven job, and we're providing for the health care of Montanans. That's pretty exciting. We need to tell people that. Say there are jobs out there that pay good, they have good benefits, and you're doing something really important and get people excited about health care. And then I also think we need to reinvent the workforce. In healthcare, a lot of jobs are shift-driven. Our young folks and a lot of demographics, those folks, that's not what they're looking for. So let's get innovative. Let's find ways to innovate our jobs and how we expect our employees to perform them, listen to them, try to come up with unique ways because that'll drive more people there. And then ultimately, we've got to embrace technology and innovation. AI is a big deal. AI is not heavily utilized in healthcare. It scares a lot of people. Let's find out why it's not utilized. Let's find out why people are afraid of utilizing technologies like AI, and let's address it. And at MHA, we want to educate, train, help people understand it, because ultimately, if we're embracing innovation and technology, not only are we making a better workforce for our employees, but we're cutting our administrative costs and our administrative burden. And that results in cheaper healthcare maybe, results in a better workplace environment, hopefully reduce stress. I think there's just a lot of things we can do. The RHTP and 406 jobs give us the opportunity to do this now, and we're really excited about what the future is going to hold.
Tracy, Northrop Grumman is a big company with a global brand and a growing footprint in Montana, which is exciting for all of us. Could you talk to us a little bit about the jobs that you see coming, and where do you think that workforce is going to come from?
Yeah, so I want to answer that, and I do want to piggyback on something Ed said, and it's not about the high school that might be better than CMR. But real quickly, how many of all of you held a job while you were in high school? Yeah. How many of you have children that held a job in high school? Yeah, it's a little bit more than when I asked that question mostly. And so what I find interesting, this is not a Northrop opinion. This is just a Tracy opinion with high schooler kids still in the house. It's really hard for some of our high schoolers to go to work, but we could really use them. You know, if a 14-year-old could go and wash dishes 2 nights a week, that would make a big difference in how effective your local cafe can be. And I have a 14-year-old friend in Lewistown, Montana, whose mom, single mom, was working in a healthcare facility, and they couldn't get all the meals served. So she couldn't go home until all the meals were served. So she was trying to round up every 14-year-old she could, but 14-year-olds can't do a lot of work in Montana. So we have to look at some of our laws. If we want to change some of our workforce and we want to expose kids, my young friend will tell you he never wants to work in food service again in his life. But he also learned that he really liked working with older people, the elderly. And so that's a shift for him, and that exposure helped him. So at Northrop, we're going to be looking for folks that are going to build. So we're really looking in the trades. And not a lot of it is going to be as specialized as we originally thought. So there's going to be general labor, which means we'll be able to bring people in, and you as entrepreneurs and small businesses will be providing most of our services. So we're here at the table with the resources to help all of the rest of the ecosystem be good, right? Will there be people that move here? I'm sure, right? I mean, that's just the nature of it. But when people look at a community, whether they already live in Montana or they're going to cross the river, they're looking at what school is the best, right? Because if their kiddos are going to live and grow up in Montana, they want a good education. So those are those things that we're looking at. It's not going to be, we're going to be just as competitive as everybody else because it's not about hiring a person. We are all looking at the same person to hire. I mean, we'll look at a nurse because a nurse is really good at keeping things organized and they know what shift work looks like. So how are we going to all compete for the same people? I think that's what it's really going to come down to. And how do we not steal from each other, right? I mean, there should be some healthy mentoring and sharing, but I think it's going to be more conversations just like we're having this week about how we build our workforce.
You know, I'm going to end it on this question, but we've kind of exposed a disconnect. We've got 4,000 kids that aren't going to school that graduate every year. We've got kids at Montana State and U of M that would love to stay in the state, but are struggling to do it. And I think if I polled the audience and say, how are you doing finding talent? You'd say, it's the hardest thing we do. So as a business community, we're really good at networking with other business leaders. But it looks like there's a disconnect about how we network with students and young people. I wonder if you might visit about that a little bit.
I think I'll turn it this way. I'm not going to think at all on that one.
I would love to jump in here. This again goes to this notion that, you know, everything is constant and remains the same because we know it doesn't. Workforce challenges are constant, but they never look the same. And the way we work doesn't look the same as it used to. And we need to together meet these challenges. We have to lean into this, and that's definitely what we're doing with Career Services at Montana State. Is how can we be better, and trying to address this gap, because this is important. That's why I mentioned it was the first thing I mentioned today on this panel, and it's understanding where the students are at, which your career services offices would be able to help you with, but also understanding where industry is at, where employers are at, and how do we bring you in. And one of the things that we're looking to do to try to innovate, think differently about how we bring you in to the campus and create these career connections is industry days for Montana businesses. And if you sign up for our Spring Career Fair, you will have an opportunity to join us on these industry days we're piloting. And the purpose of this is really to educate students about all of the opportunities, the variety of opportunities that you were both talking about, actually, across the board, right? And how do we help students open their minds to the skills that they're developing and how they can actually apply those across different jobs and different industries. There's a lot of opportunity and possibility out there, and you have a strong need. And again, I will impress upon you to please reach out, careers@montana.edu. It's really easy. And join us at the Career Fair and come talk with us, and let's think through this. We're really open to how we can innovate, and furthermore, we're looking at exploring ways to integrate technology so that we can kind of advance this networking and mentoring in these career connections. Because not everything can be done in person, but also the students today don't always want to just go meet you in person. They're scared. They're nervous. You intimidate them. And so getting them at the career fair is amazing, and it's an amazing experience for them to expose them to that even as freshmen. But how else can we create this connectivity? And those are things that we're exploring and looking into now. And we want you to participate in that.
I'd like to add to that. We were talking yesterday. I worked on a project about 4 or 5 years ago with some nurses down here in the Helena area. And they were all living in campers out at the Alameda camp spot out of town. And they were having a problem that every time a house came up on the market, they couldn't get there quick enough to, and so they were doing blind offers because they had jobs. There was 5 or 6 of them had signed on to the hospital here, not realizing they wouldn't have housing when they got here, right? And so here they are living in campers, winter's coming, like literally, and they're trying to figure this out. I know 3 of them left and went to work in the South. I'm assuming the other 3 or 4 of them stayed. But hearing yesterday that 1,100 houses are being built in Helena is phenomenal. I would imagine that many of you who are struggling to hire in Helena will now have an opportunity to hire a little bit easier if you know that you could bring somebody to Montana because they have a place to live. Housing is key. I think it's key. IND Hemp out of Fort Benton talks about all the time. She's running a business that she would do so much more with her business if she wasn't focused on housing 90% of her time, right? And so those are some of the areas that I think that we have to solve together.
Yeah, I just want to build a little bit off what Elizabeth said. I think it's important those of us in industry understand that we can't just, I love the career fairs and I love the work that the university system does, but we can't just wait for those opportunities. We have an obligation to get with our schools at all levels and make sure they understand the career needs that we have in our professions and that their kids have access to learn more about those careers. And then I think the educational institutions have an obligation to make sure that they're working with us as well in industry, so when the kids complete their education path, whatever that might be, that they are prepared to enter the workforce and there's not a whole lot of additional work that has to be done. They can come to the workforce and get right to work. And I think if we understand industry, that we have a big role in this, education understands their role, we can be successful.
Very good. Let's give this panel a hand. Thank you. I'm going to end this by maybe a call to action and a little recognition. The governor designated 6 high-demand sectors, and I'm going to name them. And if you're in these sectors, we're looking for partners. Construction trades, health careers, education and childcare, advanced manufacturing and computing, recreation and hospitality, and professional and financial services. That is the group, the first 6 that are going to be priorities in this process. And as I started this process and said, the governor's expectation, if industry is coming to the table, resources and time. And if I could call David Smith and Barry Hauser and John Hurd up, I want to do a little bit of a recognition and tell you a little bit of a story about what the construction trades are doing. And this group here has been pivotal in the last 4 years to make that a reality. Build Montana, if you haven't heard about it, is a program that's been launched in the pandemic. Wasn't a business, but a group of businesses that all compete against each other and say, we've got to figure out this workforce initiative together. We can't do it alone. Last year, and the meeting is next week, but last year the Contractors Association at their winter meeting raised $117,000 to support the Build Montana program in a dessert dash. Selling desserts, the industry coming together and saying, we support what you're doing, we know we need to do this together, it matters to our industry, and we've got to get active. And this group right here is really responsible for that, and we wanted to say thank you and recognize you for that. As a part of that, I'm going to take the governor's advice and tell you that our family foundation at RDO is making a $12,500 donation to the Montana Contractors Association. Congratulations.
This is the second most beautiful trophy presentation.
You were at the other trophy presentation, yes, indeed. So thank you. We would love to encourage and call to action everyone in this room that's in one of those. And if you're not in one of those first 6 priorities, we got a fantastic labor commissioner that'll say, follow me, we'll figure this out. So if you're available after, you want to talk about how we can get involved, we'd love to have you do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. And I think one of the things that strikes me with this is that when you think back 10 years ago when this workforce issue was being elevated by the business community, you wouldn't have seen what you just saw here, where you've got education and business coming together, working together to how do we address this problem together. And I think one of the great takeaways, Adam stressed it at the end of the panel discussion there, was how the university system, the University of Montana, or Montana State University, and the various colleges in Montana are pivoting to address the needs of the business community. And there's more collaboration going on today than we've ever seen before. And I think the big takeaway too is that we heard from Elizabeth, and I know it's the case at the University of Montana, it's incumbent upon the business community to go to those schools, go to those colleges, and start developing the relationships and the networks with the students. We do a great job in this room here, but our audience is really at the university level, and we need to do a much, much better job of doing that in order to help fill this gap.